Welcome to Cybersecurity Refined and Feral, where refinement meets chaos in the digital world. We invite you to join your co-hosts Candy Alexander and Kaylin Sullivan in another open conversation on topics related to cybersecurity.
Hello, everyone. Welcome to Cybersecurity Refined and Feral. I'm Candy Alexander.
And I'm Kaylin Sullivan. Thank you for joining us today. We are so happy that you are here. Today's topic, we're going to be talking about imposter syndrome, recognizing it, and seeing how we can overcome it. I know that I personally encounter this quite often. One of my favorite stories from my job was I had confessed to my previous manager that I feel like I don't know enough when it comes to technical security stuff. And the more that I'm finding, the more that I'm learning, the more I'm realizing that I don't know. And he was like, "Yeah, that's normal for an engineer. Once you start understanding the scope of everything, you realize just how much you don't know." And I do battle with that quite often. This past weekend, I was out to dinner with friends and meeting somebody for the first time and going through all of my accomplishments and titles, and that's in quotations. And it made me feel almost like I was bragging. And I'm truly not like that whatsoever. It's just I have so much going on. So even to that extent, feel like an imposter syndrome, but yet all of my accomplishments. What about you?
Absolutely. Didn't realize it. Just like anybody, right? We never realize we are experiencing it. I think the relief comes as well is that you and I aren't the only ones. There's a lot of people on LinkedIn expressing this. So again, not anything unique to us. And ironically enough as well, through recognizing this and putting a label on it, able to understand it's not gender based either. So that was kind of a relief because my experience I thought was right. So years ago when I first started working in cyber and technology, it was said this before, it was myself and my dear friend Robin Wheeler and we were the two females working in the data center system support for VAX engineering at Digital. So extremely brilliant people. And just the visuals I have from back in those days just makes me laugh. But we were the two, chicks in the group, right? All the other guys or all the other staff were guys, and we had to keep up with the guys and everything else. And I think there is that gender difference that emphasizes this, right? That you're just a silly girl, or that type of thing. And again, much younger than I am today, so there's that. But it definitely occurred, and like you, it was the more I learned, the more I figured I didn't know. And I think now it's even worse because when I started in cyber, it was security analyst. That was it. So the security analyst did everything. You did, compliance. You did governance. Then was your company policies, compliance against your company policy. So there's that. And then risk was, just, it was a thing, but not like GRC today. It wasn't then. And then it also, you were a forensic specialist, you were a social engineer, you were a pen tester. I mean, everything. And so now with each of those disciplines in cyber maturing into their own specialty and career path, I
Yeah.
now feel like, oh my gosh, I am like, I am so, unaware and uneducated. Haha. But so I don't think it is necessarily gender based. It's a fact of, and perhaps it's technology and it's
Mm.
not just cyber. What do you think? What do you think about that? Is it more than our profession, or is it our
Oh,
profession?
I'm sure. Yeah. Oh, I'm sure. It's probably just a human thing, right? And let alone gender. I know it expands all levels of experience too. I mean, there have been like award-winning CISOs that have like confessed, like, yeah, this makes me nervous. I think if you don't experience this, you might be a sociopath, and that's a different topic for a different day. I know that I can really relate to, like, I've recently tried to be more accepting of the fact that, like, yeah, I don't know something,
Hmm.
and that, but also like being vocal about that's an area I want to improve in,
Right.
which I feel like a lot of people struggle with that too. It's not like being vulnerable and saying like, yeah, I don't know how to do this could be very scary for a lot of people.
Especially CISOs.
Yes, yes. It's almost like you take it as like a personal
Hit.
defect. Yeah. Like, oh, you should know all of this. Like, no, my brain is only so big
Right.
and can only handle so much information.
Well, especially, and again, maybe it goes back to the diversion of our specialties, right? Like when you look at folks at my level of the profession and career experience, right? CISOs, you've got the business CISO, you got the GRC type CISO, and then you got the tech CISO, and even amongst the CISOs, probably doing a little shift here. Sorry, but it comes down to competitive or
Yeah.
competition of like CISO experience or capabilities, and I'll say it that the tech CISOs often I feel, and maybe it's my imposter syndrome coming out, but I feel like I'm looked down upon because I'm not technical anymore. I used to be. I can,
Mm.
talk the talk, walk the walk, but Lord help us if you put me in front of a console and expect me to, do some, threat hunting or, some
Network
coding or something
configuration.
like that. Yeah.
Yeah.
So, but that
Yeah.
doesn't mean I don't have the skills, experience, and the knowledge to be effective in my job.
Yeah.
And so makes you think that that's part of the imposter syndrome. And I know, on the other hand, there are technical CISOs that feel incompetent because they can't talk to the business.
Yeah. 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 Going back to your question about if it's just tech, I would imagine that it's not. Um, I'm sure there's other departments within, the organization that have the same issue as far as like HR, legal, um, finance. Like, how do you, they don't know IT stuff, but do they feel bad about it?
So let's unpack that a little bit, because I think one of the reasons that we do feel it to the extent we feel the imposter syndrome is because of the rapid growth and expansion and capabilities of technology itself. And,
Yeah.
I've said this once, I've said it 1,000 times. We, as cybersecurity professionals, have to learn the technology just like a technology support person or a developer or whatever. And then we have to get in front of that train and learn the risks about it. So that the fact that, we're trying to keep up with technology as quickly as it's, coming at us with changes in growth, especially in the world of AI, and now to, jump, leapfrog in front of that to learn about the risks,
Yeah.
exposures of that. It's
on top of your day job.
And I think that that's why we feel the imposter syndrome, that I don't know enough. And do I really belong here? And I think when we stop and like introduce ourselves in the professional capacity and give our background, or develop our bio, it's like, is that really me?
Yeah, like, whoa, really? Am I doing all of this stuff? Like, it doesn't feel like like, I have all of these things, but internally, like, there's that voice that's like, but you're not doing them at 100% perfection.
Right.
So you can't be that good at it.
Right.
Yeah.
Yes. Well, that goes back to, again, the diversion of the specialties within our profession. Again, pen testers, application security, GRC. GRC itself has broken into many different sectors, right? With like privacy. And granted, I know privacy is its own profession, but for a lot of companies, you do both. And then you leave the big privacy issues to, legal counsel. And, so when we look at that, even if you have a specialty like red teaming, whatever, you still don't know all there is to know about cyber, because it's like, infinity and beyond. It's massive.
Yeah. I think being kind to yourself too is like, I don't know all of that stuff. And if you're in a leadership position, it's up to you to balance out your teams to make sure that those knowledge gaps are covered by competent people, right?
So I think it goes back to culture, like so many things, right? Within organizations, it's cultural based. And, I'm thinking about, again, and we've talked about this before, that the downfalls of like social media have caused a lot of competitive nature, if you will. Like, oh, I'm speaking here, and I wrote this book, and then you sit there and it's like, well, gee, I'm just doing my day job, and that I'm struggling with that. So I guess I'm not that good, or
hey, I logged in today.
yeah. So I think we need to be kind to ourselves, both from an organization perspective. So like, really cheer on and elevate and celebrate our peers' accomplishments within your group, your company, or it's in your community of cybersecurity. And that's why I've really been a lot more focused. Like my thing this year has been to really elevate and celebrate. Like just recently, Sunil, I'm sorry, I can't remember his last name. He's going to RSA in the innovation sandbox. So it's like, that's insanely incredible and good for you. I am so proud that I know you and you're doing this. So doing those types of things, I think it all starts with one, and that maybe, we could organically grow that culture amongst the cybersecurity community. So rather than being competitive, recognize and celebrate the uniqueness of each of ourselves, and maybe
skill sets.
And then understand you can't know it all, and what you do is pretty darn good. So you're not an imposter. You do belong here.
Yeah. And also, maybe this is something I'll start doing on LinkedIn, is talking about like your failures.
Celebrate
like, it's
your failures.
okay. Yeah. Like, okay, this happened, but what did I learn from it?
Right. And there's that, saying that if you don't fail, you don't learn. You don't learn, you don't succeed.
Yes. Yes. Exactly. Yeah.
So, what are some ways that we can identify what we're going through or what our listeners might be going through? I think it's important to recognize when you're experiencing the imposter syndrome. So, because it's only by recognize it are you able to overcome it, right? So, what do you think are some techniques? I know, we've talked just now about a couple of them about recognizing accomplishments and celebrating each other.
I think one thing you can do is probably like say like for me personally, like I need to learn more about like application security, product security stuff. So taking instead of being like, yeah, I don't know about that, I am one taking action to actively learn more about application security, two finding mentors or people that can help support my knowledge of that. And instead of focusing on the fact that I can't do it or like my knowledge, I mean, I have knowledge. See, that's one of the things. You just have to think logically about it. Like, yes, I do have knowledge about it. It might not be to the depth that I want it to be, but acknowledging the fact that, yes, okay, I do know what I'm talking about at some points. And yes, I may need support on others, but I think that's acknowledging the truth of the facts and not letting your inner voice, talk you out of it, right?
Right. And again, it's kind of like, realizing when people say, geez, Kaylin, you did a really good job. And then you're like, well, it was
Like I didn't,
or
yeah, or
whatever.
I missed this or that, or yeah, yeah.
Like stop dismissing and
Thank you.
because I used to do that a lot too. Just, be quiet and say thank you and have gratitude for
Hmm.
that recognition. You don't have to, get all puffy chest over it or get a big head or say, oh, no, no, because another thing I would do as well is, oh, it was the team or whatever, So when somebody calls you out and giving you a compliment, say thank you. I appreciate
Yeah.
that. And leave
Learn
it
how
at
to
that.
say
It's
thank
okay
you.
to leave it at that.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. On the opposite side of that, being too, there's a difference, obviously, right, with like taking credit for people's work and acknowledging thank you for your recognition. Um, not diminishing yourself. You could also lift up your teammates, like, yeah, also thanks to so and so that helped me out a lot on it.
Right.
Yeah.
But then that kind of just negated what I said because now you're doing that. Because I would do that.
Yeah. Transferring.
You're transferring
Yeah.
that credit or
Yeah. Yeah.
so be careful with that.
Yeah. Just say
Right.
thank you.
Like
Just say thank you.
if I was the team lead and I said, geez, Kaylin, you really did a good job and I really appreciate the time you're putting into it.
Yeah.
Period.
Thanks.
I didn't say, or, and those things come above and beyond type of, you know, um, you know, yeah, recognition as
Achievements.
opposed to like if I was in a team meeting, okay, team, you guys did outstanding,
Yeah.
then that's a team thing. But if you are being
Yeah.
signaled out, then
Individually.
take that
Yeah.
and don't
Yeah.
transfer that.
Don't
Own
make
it.
excuses. Yes. Yes.
Yeah, good for
Don't.
good or bad.
Yep.
Own
Yep.
it. Like we especially will own when something goes wrong. We've talked about this before. Like, gee, I'm sorry, that's my fault. I did that. I've learned from it and I'm going to correct that moving forward. Just as you own when things go bad, you need to own when
Yeah.
things go good. And then through that acknowledgement, you're going to start to become overcome that imposter syndrome. It's like, well, gee, maybe I do belong. Maybe I am doing a good job,
Yeah.
So I think, that's really, really important. Another thing too, you probably recognize this more than others in me, but I need to have things just right. A perfectionist.
Yes. Yes.
So I think,
Yeah.
it's been through a lot of self examination and conversations with friends and loved ones that I'm trying to overcome, that aspect. But just realize it's okay that things aren't perfect.
Yeah. Well, that goes back to me with my schoolwork in particular. Like if I don't get an A, I get so mad. But now I'm not as bad, but now I will, this is going to sound absolutely psychotic. I go through each of the assignments and figure out which I don't have to do in order to still get an A. So I'm not like, I need this 100%. It's okay to be like, I should really like accept like, yeah, like a B or a C is okay. Like GPA doesn't matter at this point in my career, in my life. Um, but it's the fact that like I know I can do it, so I want to do it.
But that's the
But
competitive.
yes, yes. But I don't have, like, I shouldn't make myself sick or stress out about not being able to accomplish anything because like there's other competing priorities in my life. And that's where I think I get that from probably from you with your perfectionism. Like I know I can do this, and god damn it, I'm gonna do it.
I don't know what you're talking about.
Yeah. Yeah, perfectionism and competition.
Well, but it's hard. And I think for me, that competitiveness comes from showing that I'm as good as the guys.
Yeah.
I just
Yeah.
because, and that is deep rooted, and that goes back to, the feeling of incompetency because I didn't get the STEM
Yeah.
instruction, education that,
That they did. Yeah.
I don't even think that was really even a thing when I was,
Mm-mm.
I mean,
Yeah.
so I felt that I had to do the job and do it like, and to some extent, this was true. I had to do the job and I had to prove myself. I'll tell you, working in tech, being a young lady, young woman, surrounded, because again, I worked in engineering, VAX engineering. So, you know, really, 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 really smart engineers, never mind, my fellow, system admins, as system managers. So I did have to prove myself that I do
Mm-hmm.
belong here. And I think that only fed the fury of the imposter syndrome. Um,
Yeah.
but I think, because we have diversity and everything today, that helps.
Yeah. Yeah. I can I can definitely see where that would come into play and being rooted in feeling like you need to fit in, which would tie in with the imposter syndrome too. Like, well, my knowledge is so much, it varies so much from my colleagues. Do I actually fit in here? Right? And feeling the need to prove yourself. I'm sure it wasn't overtly stated to you, like you need to prove yourself. I'm sure it's like social cues, behavioral
Yes.
cues that you're paying attention to and in meetings and everything. I get that a little bit too at my own job because where I'm so siloed. I'm a part of the engineering team. Um, but my manager does an amazing job trying to like include me and make sure like if I don't understand what's going on in the conversation, I feel comfortable enough to ask him, what does that mean? Can you explain that to me?
I
Which
would
goes back to culture. So yeah,
Never.
yeah,
Because they would turn around and say, see, you don't belong here. Or at least that's how I
yeah,
felt, right? I mean,
yeah.
and
But it's a cultural
faced it.
thing.
Right.
Yeah,
And we're talking, the
uh,
80s
yeah.
when,
It was
yeah,
much different. Yeah, yeah, yeah,
yeah. So, and again, that just fed that paranoia and
yeah,
the imposter syndrome mentality of like, ooh, so
yeah,
I just sat there and didn't say anything, did not necessarily ask. I had trusted people that I would go afterwards and say,
yes,
help me understand, or
yeah,
I would learn by absorption and
yeah,
observation. I would just absorb, it's kind of like walking in the middle of a conversation and then picking it up from there. So I got really good at that.
yeah,
So I think, when we think about the imposter syndrome, I think it was based on realities.
yeah,
Like when I first started in cyber and tech, um, and then now I think there are subliminal social cues at times,
yeah,
especially in cyber, like we talked about, like, competitiveness of the profession, um, and again, the cultural thing, like in Massachusetts, it was very competitive and kind of
yeah,
rough, rather than, supportive and inclusive, or other
mhm,
regions of the United States, if you will. So I think when we look at it from the historical perspective, I think it was based on reality,
mhm,
but quickly was dismissed, right? Like again, the engineers giving those social cues and being little snots, and then, approving yourself.
mhm.
And then they, I don't know.
Yeah, yeah, yeah. Um,
So, how do we overcome it? I mean, I'm still working. I don't have it as bad. I
mhm,
still have to remind myself I need to walk my own path and not
yeah,
worry about that I don't have a book, that I don't, I'm not a keynote at like all these conferences. That's not my path. And so that's like how
yeah,
I'm trying to, get through the imposter syndrome, but realizing that, and this is something I learned a long time ago, right? Um, when you look at teams, right? Everybody has something to bring to the table, and
yeah.
you don't want a team where
With
everybody's the same.
duplicative. Yeah,
So
yeah,
recognize that. And I do now, I have to keep talking to myself and say, my inside, internal voice is like, now, Candy, you, clearly have, your own perspectives that add value. And that's validating, right? Because you do look for that subliminal validation, social
yes,
cues in that regard, right? But
yeah,
I now do get, geez, that was a great presentation you gave or whatever. And it's through maturing throughout my profession that I've been able
yeah,
to overcome like 85, 90% of imposter syndrome. But even at my stage, I still get it. What about
yeah.
you?
Um, I think you brought up a story or a point about feeling validated. Today I was in a meeting that was kind of leaning towards application product security stuff, and my coworker was late to the meeting, and he ended up asking a question that I asked before he even got on the phone call, and I was like, it was like, can I interrupt this for 1 second? I just want to say how proud I am that I asked that same question at the beginning of this meeting. So like acknowledge taking the time, whether you're vocal about it, like me being a psychopath interrupting the meeting, depending on your culture, or internally taking a moment to realize like, yes, I was on the right track. Like I do know what questions to ask because oftentimes sometimes you can feel lost in context or in situations, conversations where you don't have the full picture, it's okay. And you can
Well,
prove to yourself that you know, like, you're on the right track and celebrate that.
so you bring up something that made me just think sometimes, because again, the diversity of teams and thinking, I come at things at a different angle.
Yeah.
Right. And I'll ask a question. And when I was younger, I'd ask that question and people would pause. And it's like, oh, did I just throw
Yes.
myself out there like I'm an idiot? and,
Yes.
and now I realize it's that sometimes, and I'm not boastful here, but sometimes my way of thinking cuts ahead like 5 steps. So that I have to recognize that as well, that it's their pause and their hesitation is not because asking
You're
yourself a
stupid.
silly
Yeah.
question. It's
Yeah.
because it's like, oh my God, I didn't think of that. Um,
Yeah.
so I think, it's kind of like dare to be different. You
Yeah.
know, having self confidence, and let's face it, I mean, that's the basis of the imposter syndrome, lack of self confidence, and that you have to, keep being your own therapist and your own best friend, like you said, and stop and take those wins, whether it's publicly Kaylin interrupting a meeting or it's, you know, internally, your internal voice saying, "Nice job, you did do that,"
Yeah.
and so
And then take it one step further, like acknowledging, like, yeah, you asked a great question. Feel free, like I did in that meeting, to ask other questions. Like,
yes,
oh, I'm not understanding where your thinking is going with that. Can you explain that one step to me and why you asked that question? To my coworker, like in the meeting, not being afraid to say, like, hey, I don't fully understand your train of thought on where that question came from. And then that leads me to feel more comfortable with asking other questions, which, me being me, is slightly feral. I'm like, this might be a stupid question or a stupid suggestion,
that
but
right there,
I know is, yes, I should just leave that off, say it
yes,
internally, and say, what about this?
exactly, exactly. So I loved everything you said except for that part. Leave this
Yes.
part out. This might be a stupid question. Never, ever is there any question that is
Yeah.
stupid. Let's just get that clear.
Yeah.
But I really like that you would, and it's not challenge, but more pause and reflect. Gee, John, really like that question. I want to understand where you were coming from, because that is now an education knowledge sharing opportunity for you to understand his or her critical thinking path
Mm-hmm.
and approach. And I think that that's something I can tell you in cyber and in technology in general, probably more cyber, we don't explore the critical thinking portion of
Mm-hmm.
it. And so, again, I think that also goes back to the diversity of teams, right? Again, some people's personalities and characteristics are more inward and more critical thinking type, and others have different skills and whatnot. So I think that,
Yeah.
that's that.
Yeah. Yeah. 100%.
Yeah. All right. So I think this has been a really good conversation. I don't
Oh,
think it's the end.
no, and I actually wanted to interrupt you because I wanted to ask you a question, that I think would be really interesting from your perspective. Look, when you're like looking at me and my career growth, what do you see that I'm being affected by as far as imposter syndrome that you experienced when you were younger? Like,
Well,
are there
just
similarities?
yes, absolutely. or mother-daughter, mini me and me.
Yes.
So I would push that question out to our listeners. Love to hear, are you relating to some of these traits that we're sharing? Just that conversation you had where you said this might be a silly, stupid question, but I used to do that a lot. Or I would embrace that silly girl syndrome and ask, and don't do that. Don't do that to yourselves. Don't. You're not silly girls. You're brilliant, smart women. And don't play that. That's just really derogatory and self-sabotaging. But I too would do that. And I would say anybody who does that and goes back to that trait as well, or indicator that you're going through this imposter syndrome by saying self-doubt, right? Like, I'm afraid to ask this question, or things like that. Don't remove them from your vocabulary, if you will.
Yeah. I would have to agree. I mean, there's a difference between asking like actual dumb questions, like but actually, I was gonna say like, what is this meeting about? But if you have to ask that, there's something seriously wrong, right? Like, why are you having this meeting? But yeah, there's no dumb questions.
No, I mean, if you have to ask what this meeting is about, it clearly, to me, that suggests that the meeting facilitator didn't propose the agenda correctly,
Yeah.
I mean, that's not on you.
Yep.
So I think, again, recognizing the dynamics of teams as well.
Yeah, be kind to yourself.
Yeah, you do belong. They wouldn't have hired you, I promise you. They would not have hired you or engaged with you if they did not feel you were qualified or capable. So that imposter syndrome is all in your head.
Yeah. All right.
Yeah. So I think that's it, huh?
Yeah.
So I hope all of our listeners have been able to self-identify, relate, recognize some of the challenges of the imposter syndrome, that it is a real syndrome. However, it's all in your head. That, again, you have every right or responsibility. You actually have a responsibility to contribute and realize that teams are made up of diversified thinking, a representation of culture, all different types of aspects. So, stand strong, feel confident. It takes time, and recognizing it is the first step. And then just, talk with people about it who you feel trusted, and having those conversations, and talk to yourself and just, tell yourself to stop doing those things. So with that, I think we'll go ahead and wrap it up. We hope, again, that you enjoyed this. We ask that you give us a thumbs up if you found this conversation useful. Subscribe to our YouTube channel so that you can stay on top of our latest episodes and publications. And again, follow us on LinkedIn or connect with us directly on LinkedIn. Love to hear your thoughts and comments. Anything in closing, Kaylin?
Nope, just to reiterate, share with your friends if you find this to be helpful for somebody.
Yeah, absolutely. All right, with that, we're going to close. And until next time, stay secure, stay refined.
And don't be afraid to get a little bit feral.